Hello and welcome. This is Get Involved Referee with me, Lindsay, Herron and Steve Conroy, as we pour over all the major issues in Scottish football in terms of the men in black who were busy at the weekend. Steve had a couple of major incidents to deal with, but not least the great and the good gathered at Hampden at the end of last week to get a little bit of an instructional couple of hours from Crawford Allen, the head of refereeing, which was all off the record and unreportable, really. So we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm sure you've got some good, insightful views in that whole scenario. But listen, the sort of ugly side of the game again reared its head at the weekend, unfortunately, and that's simulation. Players attempting to win an advantage through ill-gotten gains, if you like. Let's start, if you don't mind, at Tynecastle on Saturday in the Hearts match against St Johnstone. Craig Levine, one of your old chums, going back to Tynecastle against Stevie Naismith, the sorcerer and the apprentice, if you like. But late in the game, Kenneth Vargas comes on as a substitute, and he blatantly dives, Steve, to try and win a penalty. First of all, what's your instant thought about that, and what do you think should be done about it?
Well, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking that the pure and simple, it's cheating. You could dress it up any which way you want, but bring it down to it, the guy cheated, and it was appalling. It was shocking. Mainly because he made such a hash of it. It was so blatant. It was, it really was a shocking one. But that doesn't matter if it had been one much closer, but from the same the same position. Mm-hmm. It's still cheating. And there's only one way that you can cut this out, because being caught like that doesn't seem to stop them. It doesn't seem to matter at all to them that they're going to be caught on camera, and that's going to be beamed round the world, and everybody in the world that watches a Hearts game, is going to know that he's a cheat. Yeah. That doesn't seem to affect their reckoning at all. The only way to do it is that you make it a red card offence, you get them sent off, and it doesn't happen with anything else. But I think it's such a blight on the game that even if you're not sent off during the game, retrospectively, you should be. There's no other way of acting upon it. And one of the things that gets me about it, and I know Jim Duffy came to our conference one year and said, my team's never, they never practice it. He must be one of the few teams who didn't practice it, because the way that Vargas went down is wholly unnatural. Even if he had been tripped, that's not going to make you do a double sulco. And it's spectacular the number of times that they land looking up at the ref. It's everything about it is appalling. They're cheats, and we need to do something about it.
It did look choreographed, didn't it? I mean,
absolutely. But he practiced it. The way that he left his foot, and luckily the defender just didn't have a go at all. He knew that nothing was going to happen from that. But he left his foot in there. You could see him virtually digging about for the defender's foot. But the way he spun round in midair and landed looking back up at the referee, that's practiced. That doesn't happen by chance.
I mean, okay, Kenneth Vargas comes from Costa Rica, but this is not unique to South and Central America. I mean, it happens homegrown players as well. We saw that at the Aberdeen game, Aberdeen Rangers match on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Todd Cantwell clearly trying to gain an advantage when he throws his foot in towards Jamie McGrath and falls to the floor.
That was just as appalling, just as shocking, and just as blatant. And yeah, you could see him fishing about for contact. But again, the way he threw himself to the ground, the pair of them should be ashamed of themselves. And it wasn't just those two. We've talked about it with the worst one, or one of the ones we talked about, was it last season, with Rio Hatate dived in the centre circle. It's the same thing. It's cheating, and you should be sent off for it.
The Vargas one, though, was quite interesting. I mean, he was lucky that the St Johnstone defenders didn't get anywhere near him, because I think he might have been hung, drawn and quartered.
Well, there was at least three of them were going to have a go, but he was lucky that a couple of his colleagues were there. And one, forgive me, I can't remember his name, who initially turned round and you could see him appealing to the ref, but changed his mind awful quickly when he knew what was happening. So he was lucky. I'd be spitting mad if I was one of the defenders too.
What do referees think about this in general? I mean, I know your own personal view is it should be an automatic red, but the guys in the game at the moment, are they with you on that, do you think?
On the whole, I think maybe not quite as blatant as me that they should all be red carded, but the phrase something should be done. Everybody knows that something should be done. And it's as well as an attempt to con the punters, it's an attempt to con the ref and make the ref look stupid as well. So all in all, it's a vile practice. Send them off.
And do you think that would be the ideal solution? Do you think it would prevent and stop it?
I can imagine if Mr. Vargas or Mr. Cantwell had got themselves sent off, there would be words from their manager when they got back into the changing room. So absolutely, I think it would have an effect. At worst, it wouldn't make it any worse. But if they had some sanction for these people, it's bound to have an effect.
And we've had it for such a long time, Steve. I mean, I'm thinking back to that World Cup in Asia. Remember the Rivaldo one when somebody kicked the ball at him, or the ball hit him, and he fell down as if he'd been shot by 3 snipers, and it was utterly ridiculous.
Oh, shocking! Yeah, the ball hit his foot and trundled up his leg, and he went down holding his face. They've done nothing about it. Largely, I think FIFA are toothless. They're very good at coming up with rules and regulations, and they're very good at semantics, and they're very good at changing phraseology. Doesn't make the blindest bit of difference. They don't do anything, and it's only FIFA or IFAB that can do something about it. So we can moan as much as we want. We don't have it in our power, but it certainly should be, because we're not the only country in the world that's blighted by this. But it certainly should be. It's much worse than a lot of the things they've been tinkering with. So it's up to them.
And it seems that football's potentially the only sport really that this is allowed to happen. You look at rugby, you look at any other sport, NFL, for example, even cricket. It's very difficult to simulate or cheat in these games. But football, you seem to get away with it.
Football, you get away with it. All the other sports that we've talked about, there is, singularly in football, there's a lack of respect, I think, certainly for officialdom. And going with stuff like that, there's a lack of respect for the people who go and watch the game, which is a complete contrast with rugby, with American football, where it's still, it still seems to be done with decency and sportsmanship. You don't get that in a rugby game. If you do get that in a rugby game, the TMO gets it and they're off, and there's no argument once they are off.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is about football, but it's appalling.
Would it be refreshing if Philippe Clement and Stephen Naismith came out this week and said, you know what, I'm disappointed in the actions of my player, and he'll never do it again?
Yeah.
You'd love to see it happen, but
would love to, but I'm not going to hold my breath. No.
It has happened in the past. I think we talked about it on the show before. Remember that Kyle Lafferty incident where he feigned he was headbutted by Charlie Mulgrew, and Walter Smith came out and publicly berated him. So it has happened in the past.
It has, few and far between.
Yeah.
And the fact that we can still talk about a decision or a comment that Walter Smith made, that shows you how often and how frequent it happens.
Exactly. Just keeping with the Aberdeen game, obviously it was a dramatic conclusion to that match, a very late VAR penalty call, which in your view was correct.
Yep.
Obviously, a bit of shirt pulling at the end on Connor Goldson by Grantman, and but Barry Robson, adding fuel to the fire at the end of the game with his post-match comments. What did you make of that?
I thought that was pretty childish, pretty infantile, and trying to add fuel to the flames. You don't need any added incentive in that game. But I don't know what he was hinting at, saying it didn't look good for Scottish football. That his defender was stupid, because there was nothing else in it. It was a foul, and the defender chose stupidly to grab a forward going past him. Goldson wasn't going to get to the ball anyway. So if it doesn't look good, it doesn't look good on his team. Nobody else is at fault there at all. Is
he trying to deflect? Is he trying to sort of play to the crowd in that regard?
Both. absolutely, and maybe particularly in that game. But he's got his own audience to perform in front of, so it's much easier him blaming Goldson and blaming the ref rather than blame his own defender for being stupid.
Do you think privately he has? Do you think privately he's pulled him aside and said, what the hell were you doing there?
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. It'd be interesting to find out, but I doubt very much we would ever hear that. And, they do talk to us and talk to the public differently than they would do in the changing room. But I don't think there's any way that can be apportioned, the blame can be apportioned to anybody other than the defender having a grab at the Rangers player.
Incredible. Pretty quiet otherwise, but just one more thing on the weekend, if you don't mind. I was at St Mirren Livingston, for example, at the weekend, and there was a VAR check on a second St Mirren goal in the second half, but nobody in the stadium knew what was going on. There was absolutely no communication whatsoever. It was only by looking at the referee, and we could see he was gesturing to his headset that he was listening to VAR, presumably talking to him down, from headquarters. This makes it such a difficult thing for fans inside the ground, doesn't it? I mean, they just don't know what's happening.
It's shocking. And I think, we've said it before, I think it treats the paying customer with contempt. Those are the guys that make it worthwhile. There's no point in going to watch a game that's got an empty stadium. Those guys pay their money. And for them to be sitting for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, without the faintest idea what's going on is contemptible. It's surely not beyond the wit of man that it could be communicated to them somehow, whether that's the fourth official shouting up at the announcer, whether they've got the big screen and there's some communication that way. Yep. But to leave punters in the dark for that length of time, not having a clue, is it's treating us all with contempt. And it does, and although it should be an instant thing, it can go on forever before a decision's made. And you can't enjoy a goal straight away. You can't cheer straight away because everybody's looking around to see, right, what's going on here. No, it's not beyond even the SFA that they can come up with some way of letting everybody know what's going on.
No, I'm not suggesting, we have spoken about this briefly before, but I'm not suggesting the referee is mic'd up and says, the game is stopped, I'm waiting for a VAR check. I mean, that can surely be down to the stadium announcer with some decent communication.
Somebody needs to tell him what's going on. But again, it's a push button thing. I push a button on my stomach. Yep. That helps me communicate with the ref. Have a different button somewhere else, and that communicates up to the announcer, so that I say to him, we're checking for offside. Great, you tell the customers.
That's it.
It's surely in this day and age there's a way of doing it.
And they could have graphics, because there only are 4 checks, aren't there, in VAR? So you could have different graphics you could throw up on the screen as soon as it's applicable.
Yeah, so we know which one it is. Is it offside? Is it a penalty? Is it? I don't think we've ever seen it yet. Wrong identity.
Wrong identity.
But obviously, there's ways that you can that we can know and just flash it up on the screen. Yeah, it's offside. Yeah, it's a penalty. Yeah, whatever. Surely they can do it.
Yeah, it's just, it seems appalling. It's easier to watch a game on television, it would appear, than be at the ground in terms of knowing what's going on.
You know what's going on when you're watching it on the telly, and you're sitting, as you were at the weekend, in a freezing cold Paisley, going, what's going on? Yeah. It's a nonsense, an absolute nonsense. But it's not, it's not the first time that we've felt that football supporters are treated with contempt. This is just how we're treated.
No, indeed. Well, that brings us obviously rather nicely towards the whole VAR discussion. And as we alluded to at the top of the show, the great and the good of the media. Well, some of the good and the great.
I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either.
So it was the great and the good.
We're asked to go along to Hampden to see Mr. Crawford Allen and his merry men to discuss a year on from VAR, basically, or a little bit more than that now. It was all off the record. Nobody was allowed to record anything, no interviews. That grates with me for a start, being a journalist, but I don't understand that. Surely there should be, first of all, there should be some transparency.
Well, it's a game that we all love. It's a game that we all support. We all go and watch. So we've all got questions that we need to ask. So the first thing that you said, the discussion, that's a typical discussion up there, that it's all one way. They're so secretive and insular, and it's even the way that they just do it. You think we're going to have a we're going to have a conference and we can all openly discuss what's happened for good or bad. And then all of a sudden it's turned out that no, you will listen. It's not. It's a lecture, and that's the way they treat people. They treat people like children, and they don't do. And again, I wasn't there, but they don't do the decent thing and give the people who are invited the respect that they can ask. So these 3 decisions that were wrong, tell us why they were wrong, and we should be able to say, so what about this, that, or the other decision that wasn't called wrong? Talk us through it. But as usual, no. This is what happens, and this is it according to the SFA.
You're obviously referring to the Independent Review Panel. Did you know such an organisation existed?
Only at the weekend. I'd never heard of such a thing, and I certainly haven't heard of anybody who's been invited on to such a thing. No idea. All
we know is that it's made up of former players and former referees. We don't know how many or who they might be.
No idea. And you wonder how independent it is if it's something that's sanctioned from there. But no, I have absolutely no idea who's on it, who's been invited. No clue.
What was your first reaction when you heard that only 3 VAR decisions this season have been incorrect?
Utterly laughable. Utterly, completely laughable. The 3 that they mentioned, they were glaringly wrong. But some of the ones, and I don't mean to be personal, but just the ones that come to mind, the Andy Considine punch last season. You don't get to discuss that. That wasn't called wrong. And I know they're talking about this season. What about the equivalence of the Goldson one, again, where he made a cracking save? You're not allowed to discuss these ones. So there's plenty of others from this season that we could mention. But why weren't they called wrong? Give us the thinking and the reasoning behind it.
And what is the how would you say, the criteria for deciding it's wrong? Because we've discussed repeatedly in this programme, of decisions that we think were wrong, and yet they're only saying that 3 were wrong. So
only 3 were wrong. God knows.
Again, is this subjective or is it a letter of the law?
Everything, to be fair, everything in football is subjective. It's objective when it's written down. It's clear and it's black and white. But during the game, it's completely subjective. You might think that the ball touched your arm above the t-shirt line. I might think it touched your arm below the t-shirt line. It's subjective. But, and I always say it, when there's fouls, there's degrees of fouls. At one end, it's a barn door foul. Everybody in the world calls it a foul. At the other end, like Mr. Vargas at the weekend, never in a million years is it a foul. The closer they get together, there's going to be an area where you think 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But some of the ones that we've discussed are so blatantly wrong.
Yes.
That we need to have an explanation for why. And coming out and saying that, Lindsay, you thought it was a foul, I didn't. That's the way it goes. It's not acceptable. And again, for the paying public to be treated as mugs in that way is just not acceptable in this day and age. It's a complete and utter joke that they think anybody's going to accept the fact that there was only 3 wrong VAR decisions. And
the interesting thing was 2 of them were against Dundee. One was apparently a wrong red card for Josh Mulligan in the game against Kilmarnock. Now, Dundee appealed that red card, and that red card appeal failed. So how on earth can they say it's a wrong VAR decision, and yet the appeal failed against the red card?
I don't know. Yeah, so the red card, they say is right, and then their independent panel has a different opinion. If we can do it, the SFA will do it. I've got absolutely no idea how that could be changed. It's just shocking.
So the other thing is, why did the SFA not even apologise to Dundee for these so-called errors? Dundee had to wait to hear that these mistakes were made. There was no, they weren't contacted privately prior to that announcement.
It's just not the way it's done. They're so secretive and insular that I think it's anybody grown up. You would phone somebody if you made such a glaring mistake. You would phone them. I've done it with managers in the past. If I've made such a huge mistake, I'll phone up and apologise for it. It's what you do when you're a grown up, but it just doesn't register with them. And all it would need would be for somebody at the SFA, doesn't matter who, to phone Dundee and say, look, nothing we can do about it now, but we messed up there. Really, really sorry. You can't change the game, but you can apologise for mistakes. We all make mistakes, so man up and admit it.
But again, I don't want to sort of hammer the point, but they're admitting it's a mistake, but they didn't allow the appeal to succeed, which is another panel, of course.
Yes, one panel comes up with one decision, and then the next panel comes up with another one. I don't know. I honestly don't know what they do and what they're up to up there.
All the while, Dundee missed Josh Mulligan for 2 matches. Whether he would have made a material difference in the games that he missed, we'll never know.
We'll never know, but it's not Dundee's fault. But they bore the brunt of it.
Exactly. And the other one was Bojan Majowski touched the ball twice when he was taking a penalty. It seems such a strange one that wasn't spotted at the time.
No, and we all make mistakes, and I've made my fair share of them, as people will no doubt remember. But the whole point of having VAR is that it's there to correct those glaring mistakes. And I had one of these things, a Twitter conversation with somebody talking about the Mulligan one, and I said that was a VAR failure, but they were saying no, it wasn't, because it was an individual's error. It was an individual's error, but the system is there to mitigate that, and it didn't.
It didn't.
So the system fails. The whole system fails if you don't notice that double touch. I can miss it because I'm human, but having a second set of eyes who can watch it and watch it and watch it. And again, we're all human, but these glaring things, when you get to look at it over and over, should not be missed.
Exactly. And I think there were 407 seemingly up till the weekend, prior to the weekend rather, VAR checks in our game, and only 24 were referred to the on-field referee so far this season, which surprises me a little. I thought there might have been more than that. I
would have thought there'd be a lot more than 24. I seem to remember, God, we all do 24 per game, but I'm really surprised that there's only 24.
But I guess these checks are for everything, aren't they, Steve? I mean, they're for every goal is checked, every potential red card is checked.
Yeah, so every time that you see where you have a sharp intake of breath at a tackle, that's looked at. Every goal is looked at. So you know that everything is being checked. But I'm still surprised that only 24 of them were sent for a review. But the very fact, and everybody listening to this or watching this will be of the same opinion, that it's laughable. If they're saying that only 3 VARs were wrong, that means that VAR is a resounding success. That's what they're telling us.
And that's what they want to tell us, isn't it?
Yeah, that's why if you were invited, you weren't allowed to ask any questions.
Well, I think they could ask questions, but they weren't allowed to publish the answers.
So what's the point?
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, unless you can anecdotally pass on some.
I heard.
I'm hearing
an insider said.
But isn't that the biggest problem of our governing bodies, not just in Scotland, but across Europe and the world, that they don't really open their doors properly?
No, of course not. They're utterly protectionist. And of course they are. Who would want to give up that number? And the last thing they want is for the likes of us to be poking and prodding at them to point out their mistakes. These organisations in their own mind are infallible, and they certainly don't want anybody pointing out what they've done wrong.
Absolutely. Steve, great to talk to you as usual. Thanks for your time
Pleasure.
tonight. We'll see you next time on Get Involved Refereeing.